Good evening, Hadley Wood, and welcome back to HWJC Live. Tonight we are honoured and privileged to have Mr. Roger Rogers on with us, a man that really needs little introduction. It's also a special one tonight. We usually be going for half an hour. Tonight we're scheduled from 8:30 to 9:30. That's not to say we're going to exhaust the hour, but it's giving us a bit more time just in case we go over, as there's a lot to talk about with Roger. Just before I bring Roger on, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can feel free to ask questions, comment in YouTube or comment in Facebook. I do see your comments coming through, so please do ask questions. You can also let Roger know how much you're enjoying hearing him as well, or myself. And please also do consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It allows you to get updates as to when our new videos are coming up, but also the more subscribers that we have, the more that we can do for the community in terms of upping our game with our online content. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Roger, but just I mentioned he needs no introduction, but just by way of introduction anyway. Roger was very, very involved with Vidal Sasson for many years, for 40 years, I believe. Roger has also been involved with the shoe company, Jimmy Choo, and he's also a very, very dear member of the Hadleywood Jewish community. He's done an incredible amount for this community and other communities, and which is why it's a real honor and privilege to be able to have him on and to speak to him. Roger, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing, Roger?
Thank you, Akiva. Hi, everybody. You say it's your honor. I mean, it's more likely to be my honor to be chosen to spend this time with everybody. What can I say?
Well, yeah, go on, Roger. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say that, you know, whenever one is given an opportunity like this, it's very hard for it not to come over in such a way as though you're ingratiating yourself, you know. So I think most of the people that know me know that I'm not so full of myself. Put myself over in the wrong way. But sometimes, you know, we talk about ourselves in such a way that maybe we tend to make more of ourselves than we perhaps should. And hopefully by the end of our time together, people won't think that of me anyhow. So.
Well, I can definitely second that. You know, anyone that's a member of Hadleywood, anyone that's ever met you or seen you in shul, knows that you're very much the opposite. You know, you're an unassuming man. You sit quietly in shul, so I don't think anyone's going to mistake anything you say tonight for being in any way full of oneself. I think it's just really an opportunity to hear from someone who's done so much for the community and beyond, and it's just inspiring to be able to listen to you and hear your life story and the wisdom which you have to share. So we'll start from the very beginning, which is a very good place to start. And I wanted to hear more about your background and your upbringing. Where do you come from? What was your childhood like? And what were your aspirations when you were a young child growing up?
Well, I like so many people, particularly in our communities. I came from a very humble background, a working class background. I was actually born in Reading. My mother was evacuated in 1944. And then at the end of the war, we came back and we were in Stamford Hill. And I was living with my mother and with my maternal grandparents. Unfortunately, I never knew my father. He was somebody that didn't stand by his commitments and disappeared. Maybe in a way that's a negative, and in a way it's a positive, because I think obviously we tend to mold ourselves around the experiences that we have. So I had an incredible relationship with my mother and my grandparents, and thankfully, because my grandparents were living with us, it enabled my mother to go out to work, and she was obviously an extremely wonderful example of working and surviving and caring and bringing up a family. And we were somewhat cramped in a flat in a house in Stamford Hill, and my mother found out about a block of flats that were being built in Highbury, actually, which was a borough council element, and it was a large flat. In those years, and we're talking about 70 years ago, it actually came with central heating, which was pretty much unheard of, and so we moved. And I used to tell people that we'd gone to the Royal Borough of Highbury with its hoge vensters, so to speak, with its high windows, and that's where I stayed until I got married. And
so it sounds like you have a lot of respect, admiration, and I guess gratitude to your mother for what she was able to do as, I guess, a single mom. What do you think she taught you most in your life, and what has she brought to you?
Well, I think obviously she taught me that you need to work to achieve. You need to respect, particularly older people, respect generally. And also, at the same time, she was concerned about giving myself and my siblings, a nice Jewish background. And when we moved to Highbury, we joined Poets Road Shul at Newington Green, which, interestingly enough, I went to Cheder there with Diana Lazarus. And in fact, Diana walked into Hadley Wood Shul, I don't know, 10 years or so again, and we hadn't seen one another for 50 years. And it's amazing.
Sure, you didn't look too different from 50 years prior either, I'm sure.
Well, she recognized me, which was a great compliment.
Yeah.
And in fact, Steve Pack's mum was also a member of that same shul. Sadly, it doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But it was terrific in its time, yeah. And I had my bar mitzvah there, and yes, it was an important time for me. And yes, you learn and have many different aspects in your life as you travel through life, and I think that we tend to look back for looking forward. So I think that whatever I've been able to achieve in my life, I haven't done it without glimpsing the past and thinking about how did I handle that, or how should I have handled that, in order to know how to handle now.
So you said that your mother was the one that really taught you what it means to work hard. And when going through school, is that something you did? And what were your aspirations? Where did you want to head in life when you were growing up?
Well, I had quite a few aspirations as a youngster living in Highbury. We were near the Finsbury Park Empire, which was one of a group of Moss Empire theatres that were all over the country. And variety was very important in those years. And these theatres had a different group of acts on every single week. And I would go with the family to these shows every week. That was my introduction to going to the theatre regularly. And in fact, some of our members, not all of them, would remember there was a personality called Carol Levis, who was an entrepreneur who was always looking for new acts, so to speak. And I suppose a little bit, I say, like Simon Cowell all the years ago. And he was doing auditions at the Finsbury Park Empire one Sunday, and along I went. It didn't produce anything for me other than the fact that it obviously gave me some more confidence.
More confidence.
Yes. I mean, I think sometimes you have to push yourself. You have to put yourself in situations that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with initially, in order to actually, you know, grasp something from within that you didn't think you necessarily had. And so, yes, I gained from that experience. I was very nervous. They always say that to be nervous is a good thing, good sign of adrenaline, and gets the mojo and everything else working. And after that, in fact, I started to spend some time at a stage school that I really, you know, I like so many youngsters. I think, you know, that somehow we see ourselves perhaps beyond the norm, so to speak. You know, when one looks at, you know, the theatre and the acting world, etc. And in a way, we are all actors and actresses in any case in our lives, in terms of how we project. And I actually went for a couple of auditions for a couple of West End musicals. One was Damn Yankees, which I think many people are familiar with as a show. The other one was called Fanny, which was people were less familiar with, and starring somebody by the name of Robert Morley. And again, it was a great experience. I went to the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane, and to actually be on the stage there was pretty inhibiting. But I didn't get the parts. But again, it was just all part of my journey. And in a way, again, talking about acting, I mean, one of the things that I particularly wanted to be was a barrister. And, you know, we all have these dreams, I suppose, in many ways. I found myself not being able to study after O-levels, which I did quite well in. I then went on to do A-levels, and it was a whole series of events, things at home, grandparents not being well, etc., etc. Not that I want to use that as an excuse. My mind wasn't for studying really anymore. And I was kidding myself. I don't think there are too many people that have actually spent 3 years in a sixth form at a grammar school and failed A-levels 3 times. Now, I don't say that with pride, but again, it was something that was taking me on. It was another step, because at the end of those 3 years, and, you know, come 18 and a half, you know, my mother said, enough is enough. What are you going to do? You need to get out into the wide world, and you need to start having a profession.
I find it amazing. I find it amazing that, you know, you mentioned you tried to go into acting, but that didn't work. You failed your A-levels 3 times, yet you still seem to think that that was something which gave you more confidence as opposed to less. Can you elaborate slightly more on that? Why did the failures not get you down at that point?
Well, why did I go into hairdressing? I was always a creative person, and for some reason or another, I used to practice doing my sister's hair, even though I'd had actually no training. She was a guinea pig, and I had a cousin who had a hairdressing salon in Dorset Street, off of Baker Street. And I would often go with my mum to town, and she was going to have, she went there when she had a special occasion to go to. And I just liked the environment, the atmosphere, and watching the creativity. And I suppose, you know, I took these signs of not necessarily getting into an acting profession, not studying, getting A-levels. These were all signs that maybe then it's time for me to knuckle down and use my creativity in a way that I can harness, so to speak. And so that's what I chose to do.
So instead of seeing yourself as a failure, you just saw yourself as someone whose talents lay elsewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. But times have changed so radically. 18 and a half, there was no way in those years that you could get an apprenticeship in any shape or form. Over 15, no way. Today, obviously, you know, the apprenticeships are given for all different age groups. But what was good was that, and what was marvelous was, I'd started going out with my late wife, Marsha, God rest her soul, and she had an uncle. Her uncle Mark was a floor manager at the Vidal Sasson Grosvenor House salon in Park Lane. At that point, there were only two salons, that one and the one on Bond Street. And obviously I told her that I wanted to get into hairdressing. I didn't know what to do. And she said, well, let me speak to Uncle Mark and hear what he's got to say. And she did, and he came back and he said, look, you know, apprenticeship is out. I don't know what they can do, but obviously you're personable, you're interested, you really want to get on. And he got me an interview. And I went along to Bond Street, and sure enough, I had an interview with the guy who was heading up training for the company at that time, a guy called Robert Adele. And I sat there for half an hour, and he went through a whole series of things. And he said, well, we can give you an opportunity. It's a new opportunity that we're starting. We can take you on for a 6-month training program. He said, you'll stand in the Bond Street salon all day and helping out, looking, learning, and then of an evening you will practice on models. And he said, we'll see how you get on in 6 months. Now, he said, the only drawbacks are that we won't pay you, and this will cost you 200 guineas. A lot of money, 60, yeah, almost 60 years ago. So what happened? We scraped the barrel around the family. My grandparents put in all that they had, and mum, and you know, we managed to get the money together, and off I went to and started my journey. At the end of the interview, this guy actually turned around and said to me, I will say one thing to you, and that is that if you do succeed in becoming a stylist with us, you might need to have a nose job. Exactly.
You said.
He actually said that, yes. And again, I thought to myself, well, you know, look, I'm going to succeed, and I'm not going to have that nose job, no matter what it is. In fact, just as an aside to that comment, the way the Bond Street salon was laid out was that there were styling stations along the walls, and when people would come in to film for documentaries or different things, etc., I would be called profile, and on that basis, there were several occasions when they asked me to go and work upstairs so that I wasn't caught in the filming. But you know, all these things tend to strengthen you, because you think to yourself, that's not really particularly important. If they think it is, fine. And I just got my head down and went on to do my clients, and did them very well.
I see this is a really common theme with yours, that you don't let these things get you down. You sort of use them as perhaps you know, springboards to bigger and better stuff.
Yes, generally I would say that has been part of my personality.
So you were so you were there. You were working for Vidal Sasson as an apprentice. So what happened after that? They liked you immediately. It took them time.
They after the 6 months, they were very satisfied with what I was achieving, but they felt that I would need another 3 months training. When they said that they would pay me, I think it was something like 30 shillings a week. After the 3 months, so when I'd completed 9 months, they were satisfied, and they said I passed that was it. I was qualified. And in fact, on the strength of that, there were only myself and one other guy who they'd actually put through this structure. The other guy didn't pass through it. I did. But on the strength of what I'd achieved in those 9 months, the Sassoon company then started what they called a diploma course, which was a 9-month course for beginners. And so they took what they'd done with me and put it into a more formal structure. And so that's that. And then I started, and
that's how you began over there. Did you ever pay your grandparents back?
I didn't pay them back in kind, in money, but I paid them back in love and respect, and they were very. I was
going to say in Nachas as well. Yeah, I'm sure they felt like it was an investment which paid off.
Yeah, sure.
So then, explain to me and to everyone watching as well, then how one ends up starting from being just, I guess, a mere hairdresser in Vidal Sasson to becoming someone more prominent within the company, within the chain, I guess. What did you do? What did you do right?
Well, I must correct you. You must never say mere hairdresser. Interestingly enough, a lot of guys in those years who didn't know what they wanted to do profession-wise, either went into hairdressing or became cab drivers. Now, they didn't stay the course in either of those two careers. They ended up going into many different fields, insurance, accountancy, whatever, etc. But it was a lot of Jewish guys went into the field, of hairdressing, etc. Obviously, as a lot of Jewish young ladies did as well, Jewish girls as well. And to this day, there are a lot of Jewish-run hairdressing businesses. After I became a stylist, I was up on the street. It was a very big salon. It was a very busy salon. And I was building a clientele. It was quite intimidating in many ways because I was working with some extremely talented, highly qualified people that had been in the industry a long time. And they were Vidal's key henchmen, so to speak. Vidal was working still on the shop floor himself. He'd reached a stage where he was only cutting hair. In those years, right at the very beginning, we used to set hair as well, which was to put hair in rollers after a haircut, which is something that isn't done today generally in most avant-garde salons, so to speak. An element is done for sure, but the cut and blow drying with a handheld dryer became very much the thing. But in those years we were setting. I had several instances where, and Vidal would, after doing a haircut, would call a stylist over to set the head for him. And I was called on several occasions. And on several occasions, after I'd put all the rollers in, the pincos, etc., he would come over. And if he didn't like the layout of what you'd done, he'd make you take the whole lot out and start over again. And can you imagine the feeling that gave you in a very, very busy salon?
I'm feeling bad for you, but I'm also feeling bad for the person sitting in that chair as well.
No, you're absolutely right. I was about to say, quite embarrassing for that lady, And I always remember one of the times that I did it was on a client, Helen Hildebrand, who owned Hildebrand dresses, because obviously a lot of Jewish companies in the schmutter business, in the clothing business, and she was a strong personality, but even as strong as they were, sitting in the chair as usual, said, it was quite an embarrassing situation. But it was again a learning experience.
Yeah,
I then reset the head exactly the way he wanted it, and so we went on, and all these things are sent to try and test us, and I learned from that, and I won't tell you or everybody else listening today what I called him at the time, but again, you sort of form a relationship as well. He didn't actually know me that well. He then, in the late 60s, he actually went to America. I stayed at Bond Street from 64 to 69, 70. I worked my way up from being a stylist to a senior stylist, and then to assistant manager there. Eventually I was given my opportunity. My first opportunity to be a manager came when we actually had a third salon at 44 Sloane Street, opposite the Carlton Tower Hotel. And the guy that was managing that particular salon, a guy called Ricky Burns, left to open his own salon and took half the team there with him. It's always a difficulty, as in many different businesses, where people build themselves up, work their way up, and it's human nature for many people to want to do their own thing, to have their own business. Interestingly enough, that wasn't something that I particularly wanted. I had an affinity with this company. Sometimes you have these things, you don't even quite know why you have them. But I saw my career with this company and not having my own salon as such. And he walked out and they said to me, "Fine, we'd like you to go and take over that salon," which of course was quite a challenge, with a very limited staff and taking half the clients away, etc., etc. And but again, that was a building block, and that was an interesting concept as well, because the front half of the ground floor, the salon was on the ground floor and basement, but the front half of the ground floor was actually a clothing shop. It was called The Shop, but it actually belonged to Browns, the people, the Bursteins, who had the clothing stores Browns on South Molton Street, and they were tremendous. They built up a fantastic business because they brought in all the leading designers. They were amongst the first to bring in these international designers into London, and so that was quite an exciting time to sort of have that in the front of your store. And obviously then I was building a relationship with the people that worked in that store, etc. And I stayed there for 3 years. I built the business up, and it was very successful. And so then the manager of the Bond Street salon had left.
Can I just ask you, before we move on in that story, how did you have the experience or the know-how to go and move into the business side of things? Because up until that point, you were cutting hair and you were a stylist, and where did you get that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of what we do in life, we learn as we go along on the job, as they say. And the manager that I worked with, a guy called Joshua Galvin at Bond Street, he showed me a lot of the ropes, but I think a lot of management is intuitive. And I think that good management is people management. It's understanding what makes individuals tick, and we're all different, and so we all function in slightly different ways. And I think it's understanding people like yourself that means that you can guide people and help people and learn from them. And of course, you make mistakes going along, but hopefully we learn from them. And I think I had a sympathetic ear. I enjoy people, and likewise, I think in turn they enjoyed me. I suppose I've always been thought of as being firm but fair, and so therefore, yes, I mean, obviously the aspects of learning how a reception runs, how accounting is done through that function, etc. Again, these are things that you gain knowledge of as you're traveling through your time. So and then it's interesting because in terms of how we learn and the people that we learn from, there was a wonderful Irish lady at the Sloane Street Salon, May O'Keefe, and she was an extraordinary lady. She spent 6 days a week, I would say probably about 16 hours every day in this unit. During the day, she would actually run the cloakroom, take the clients' coats, help them with their gowns, etc. And then when the salon was finished at the end of the day, she would clean the salon. And she, in her own way, she was an inspiration to me because she actually, she had the strength of character that even though I was her manager and she was considerably older, but she would turn around and say, she would tell me when she thought I hadn't handled something correctly, and she would give me her reasoning, etc. And I would listen. And so again, you can always learn from everybody around you, and she was a big inspiration to me. Yeah.
Well, that takes incredible humility to be able to do that.
Well, I think, what can I say? I think that in life we should appreciate everybody that we come into contact with, whoever they are, wherever they're from, whatever they do. And again, I think, that all the things that are going down at the moment with the racism and all these awful things that should have been eradicated a long time ago. Hairdressing has always been a very liberal business, and we've always been very open-minded about everybody. We didn't choose.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think that I just think we were more open-minded. We were more giving. Why? I suppose at the end of the day, not only when a client came in, you couldn't say, "I'll do her and I won't do her." I'll look after that lady. I don't want to do that lady. So if a client came in, it didn't matter who they were. And I mean, we were looking after everybody. We were looking after secretaries. We were looking after high-flying actresses. We were looking after very high-flying business people. And it didn't matter who they were, whether they were white, black, or otherwise. They were there for our service, and we were there to serve. And I think when you're in a service industry, you have much more flexibility in any case, in the terms of how you think. And so therefore, we were much more open-minded. We were much more flexible. And
I'm thinking as well that
again, you learn. A client comes to you maybe initially for the first time, and sometimes that they're completely new and they don't know you from Adam. Sometimes they've been referred to you by an existing client of yours, but the first time they're in the chair, you're getting to learn about them. They're getting to learn about you. Most of my clients, after years, truly were friends, and they often say that clients talk more to their hairdressers about themselves and their personal problems than they do to anybody else. Now, forgive me, but probably your situation is similar, whereby I'm sure a lot of people that you have dealings with in your communities also would open up to you, because
I think people might open up to their hairdresser more than they would to their rabbi, actually. Just having my own haircut and watching and listening to what other people say to their barbers as they're having their hair cut. I think there's a lot that's said over there, which is fascinating.
That's true, but I think, it's like everything else. There are rabbis and rabbis, and I think that it's what you give of yourself and the feeling that you give. Sometimes just a facial expression or a gesture with a hand will show that you're willing to listen and that you're willing to care. And I think all those things have brought together this whole thing about client hairdresser relationship, and yes, I mean, over the years, certainly I know from my experience with clients that yes, they became very, very close, and they help you as well. You're not just there to help them. They give you amazing advice, and also you become part of their life that goes beyond the salon as well. Amazing situations. I had one wonderful client. I won't name her, but she was the most wonderful client, extremely wealthy Jewish lady. She and her husband have been very, very successful, and they had 2 children, and lived by Regent's Park and had this magnificent apartment. And she goes home one day and she finds her 21-year-old daughter has committed suicide. And I felt that I was one of the people helping her somehow through that situation. Now, there's no way that I, or possibly anybody else, could actually ever help her get through that completely. But in my own way, because of my relationship with her, I know that I helped her, and I know that she appreciated that. So again, I think that relationships are multifaceted, and so I think it's a great thing if you're in an industry, a service business, where you can help people beyond actually the work that you do, for instance, on their hair.
I find that fascinating that you're saying that's potentially why hairdressers would have that more liberal outlook and approach to people, because they get to really interact with them and see their humanness, and see that they're really no different to them, no matter the color of their skin or where they come from. We're all human beings on the same planet, going through the same game of life. That's really interesting.
No, absolutely. And also in terms of religion as well. I mean, one doesn't, when a client comes in, one doesn't say, are you Jewish? Are you a Muslim? Are you a Christian? You build up. You cut their hair and you talk to them as an individual, as a person who is an individual, and you find common denominators, and it's amazing, quite amazing. Yeah.
So then, what's the next stage then? So you went to being manager of that.
Then I came back to Bond Street and became manager there. And a very important person came into my life. The managing director of the UK company was a man called Tom Yeardye. And he was the guy that took me under his wing, so to speak. He saw my potential much more than Vidal ever did. And Vidal had gone to America, and Tom saw what I was doing and wanted to take me further. And he made me general manager of the UK company. And then he wanted to open in Europe, and we were having a lot of hairdressers coming to us from Germany, to our schools, which had built up then. And our training courses were not just for beginners; they were for all hairdressers. Some would come for a week, some would come for a month, all learning on different levels. And we had a lot of good quality hairdressers from Germany coming to our schools, and on that basis, it was very evident that they liked our style of work and that they were going back to their salons in Germany and putting that into operation. So Tom decided that our first salon out of the UK should be in Munich, in Germany. And he came to me and he said, this is where we want to open, and I'd like you to go and run the salon there for 2 years. I went home to Marsha Gudresta and told her what I'd been asked to do. But before she could say, I don't really want to do that, I turned around and said, and I don't want to do that either. So
was that because you didn't want to live in Germany, or because you didn't want to leave the UK?
I think it was more because I didn't want to leave the UK. I'm not one of these people that is actually anti-Germany. I know there are a lot of Jewish people that will not venture to Germany or to Austria. And we all have our individual situations to think about and tolerate. So I wasn't against going to Germany. I was against not wanting to leave London, my family, etc., etc. And I knew that Marsha wouldn't be comfortable with that. So I had to resolve this situation somehow. I put my feelers out, and there was a German guy, working on our diploma course. That's the long-term course in the school. And he actually hadn't yet qualified. He was about a month away from qualifying. And I called him into the office and I said, Carl, I have the most wonderful opportunity for you. Once you're qualified, I said, how would you like to go and be manager of our first salon in Germany? And of course, he was absolutely thrilled at the opportunity. I said, I will come out with you for the first couple of months to set you up. And that's exactly what I did. And in fact, Marsha came out for a while to join me there as well. And it worked very, very well. And Carl is still a friend all these many years on. He lives in San Francisco now. He actually went on to open another 2 salons in Germany for us.
Wow.
Before then having a request to go to America. And yes, the business has been very successful. In fact, one of the young ladies that I took on as an apprentice when we first opened there, which is, oh my goodness me, well over 40 years ago, Daniela, an Israeli girl, is and still is the manager of that salon. And she's been extremely successful.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of nice things.
Yeah. So you branched out to Germany, and then you ended up going further than that. And then how did you end up?
So basically, I was then general manager of the UK and Germany. At which point, I then said to Tom Yedai, I think with the sort of position that I've got, I ought to be on the board of the European company. And he said yes. And so there I found myself sitting on the board of this company, along with some very interesting people, a leading public guy had a top flight public relations company, and one of the guys who owned W.H. Smith, and some very influential people. And again, it wasn't easy for me at that age and with the experience that I'd had to go into a situation like that, but I wanted it. I felt this was, where I belonged, etc. That was great. And then Tommy and I decided to go to America to run the sounds and schools over there. And for me, that was going to be something of a wrench, but I could see the logic for him. And they decided to bring in a marvelous lady who, her name was Felicity Green. Her name still is Felicity Green. And she was head of promotions, marketing, publicity for the Mirror group of newspapers. And she'd been a lifelong friend of Vidal's, and she had given Vidal and the Sassoon Company tremendous coverage in the 60s when the whole cultural explosion happened here in the UK, with the Beatles, with the music, with art, with everything, with Mary Quantum fashion. There was this enormous cultural explosion. And so she was very, very pro-Sassoon, and she had understood it right from the very beginning. So Vidal asked her to come in and replace Tommy Adai, which she agreed to do. And she came in on a contract, fixed-term contract. And I was her right-hand man as far as the sounds and schools were concerned. And I worked very, very closely with her. And she could see something in me. And she decided that, although I had a lot of knowledge in many ways, that she would like to enlarge my knowledge, so to speak, in other fields. And so she sent me to Henley College of Management, which is world famous. And I went there on day courses.
This is when you were, how old were you when she sent you there?
I was, let me think, I've got to do my sums now then. It was
approximately.
It was 1978, so I was 33. And I had one-to-one there, which was terrific. And working on the job with her, I learned so much about marketing and publicity from her. And so, I worked with her for 18 months, and through that time, a lot of things came together for me as far as, my abilities were concerned. Sadly, she bit off more than she could chew, in as much as they not only wanted her to head up the salons and schools, the service side of the business, but they wanted her to set up a product company as well. And I thought that I could see that was beyond, it wasn't what I think she really signed up to do. So after 18 months, she left, and Vidal's #1 henchman in America came over and sat me down and said to me, we're going to restructure the business. The product company is going to grow enormously, and we are going to either go public with it or be taken over by another large manufacturing company. So we think it's probably best if we set up the Sounds and Schools as a separate company, and we're going to offer you and 2 of your long-serving colleagues the possibility of a management buyout, which was one of the first done here in the UK. Obviously, this was very, very exciting news. And he said to me, and we're offering you the position of managing director of that new company. The other 2 colleagues, No, this was for the UK and Germany.
For the UK.
The European, yes, yeah. My other two colleagues, I'd worked with them for many, many years, knew them extremely well. We worked well together, but it was a guy and a girl. Unbeknownst to me, the guy had moaned to this chap from America. And when I went in to have a meeting the following day, with about 10 of us sitting around a table to discuss the format of the new company, it was announced that I and this other guy would be joint managing directors. And of course, nobody had the courtesy to tell me that that was a change. Now, somebody else might have thrown the towel in there and then, but I went home, spoke it through with Marsha, and I said, I'm going to do this because I know that I can do it well, even if, I've got this joint managing directorship situation. And so I accepted, and we worked very well together. We weren't given the company. We paid a lot of money for it. Fortunately, we were able to get loans from Barclays to actually pay for it. From that time on, for another 20 years, my house here in Hadley Wood was on the line to the bank. One of many things that Marsha accepted, and but these are things that if you have, I think, a strong belief, self-belief, and obviously Marsha had great belief in me, and that's what we did. And we built this new company up, and did very well with it. And in America, they'd set up a similar thing, but because of the logistics in North America, they decided that they would make each of the managers in each of those units part of this buyout structure that they were setting up over there. And unfortunately, the company didn't do very well
in America.
And Vidal came to us in 1983, and he said to us, "You have to. You're doing well here. You have to take America." And at the time, it was losing about $1.25 million. Which again, 37 years ago was no small amount. And so we said, fine, yes, we'd like to do that. That way we've got a complete entity in lots of ways, particularly creatively. And but we're not going to pay any money for this company. You have to do some sort of paper exercise, which we did. We used to supply manpower to the product company to take care of advertising, all marketing programs, demonstrations, etc., fashion shows. We would do the hair for, and we used to charge about $750 per man day. And I sat down with their financial director, and I said, look, if we go at that rate, we'll probably expire before the company's bought out. So we need to change that man day rate, and I managed to get it up to $2,000 a day. On the basis of the number of days that we had been doing for them previously, it would take us about 10 years to clear the debt. Well, somebody up there, the Almighty was obviously looking down on us. In 1984, a very, very aggressive Jewish publicist over there, a lady by the name of Jackie Applebaum, had negotiated with the Olympic Committee for Vidal Sasson to be the hair care consultants for the Olympics being held in Los Angeles in 1984. The Olympic Committee said, we don't just want hair products supplied. We want a salon set up in each of the 2 Olympic villages, and we want each salon manned for 2 months. So they came to us and they said, look, this is Vidal and Company came to us and said, this is what we want. We had to deplete, obviously, our own business dramatically in order to supply staff to those 2 salons. But at the end of the Olympics, we had cleared our debt.
Wow.
so that was really quite a story. And
yeah.
And so then we had North America as well.
North America as well.
Yeah, and so therefore, yes, another dimension. People said to me, don't think you can run your business over there the way you run it over here. You'll find them very different. They weren't different. It was what I was saying before. They were people that wanted to be respected, appreciated, etc. And we had a great community over there.
Roger, that story is fascinating. I'm conscious of the fact we've only got a few minutes left, and there's 1 or 2 more questions I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
But, your story is very much one of, I guess, perseverance, motivation, dedication, not giving up when failure comes your way, and that is an extremely inspiring story. And you really can, it really shows us how one can be successful if they just push on and plow on. So thank you for sharing that story. And I can't believe it's almost been an hour. I can't believe it. It's been so riveting. I wanted to ask you 2 things before we finish. Number 1, who cuts your hair?
I go to the guy Stuart, who's the manager of the Vidal Sasson salon in the city at St. Paul's, and I took him on over 40 years ago as a junior, as an apprentice.
I hope he gives you a good deal then.
He does.
Now, I guess that was my less serious question, but it's still fascinating to hear who does cut your hair. You have to give me some tips. You've got more hair than me, and
we always used to say that the less you've got, the more you have to look after.
That's good. Good point. I really wanted to spend maybe just the last few minutes talking about your philanthropy and your dedication to really giving, and not just to our community, but to other projects beyond our community as well. What motivates you to be so giving, and why do you do it?
I think, our Jewish community, we are brought up to be charitable, to think of others who are less well off. And less well off can mean lots of different ways. I'm not just talking about, obviously, financially. And, I was brought up to think like that. And I do believe that if you are given an opportunity when you have been successful yourself in your own, and that can be in many different ways, that we should give back. And I was approached by a lovely man, Xavier, as a hairdresser. And just as an aside, in the hairdressing industry, I'm known as Philip because that's my nom de comb, not my nom de plume, my nom de comb, because basically there was a Roger when I went to Bond Street. There was also a Morris, which is my middle name, and there was
something totally different.
Yeah, there wasn't a Philip there, so that's how I landed on Philip. Now, Xavier was actually Maury Wenger, a lovely Jewish man, but he didn't. So he had this salon just off of Knightsbridge, and Xavier of Knightsbridge obviously sounded more palatable, I suppose, than Maury Wenger. And lovely man. We became good friends, and he introduced me to the what was then the Hairdressers Benevolent, The Hairdressers Benevolent was started in about 1860 as a charity for the hairdressing industry, for people that were on hard times, so to speak, in hard times. And he introduced me to that charity, which became the Hair and Beauty Charity, and looking after also people from the beauty industry that have fallen on hard times. And that can be for lots of different reasons. It can be because of domestic abuse, it can be because of illness, it can be because of loss of a job, etc., etc. And obviously, through this pandemic, there have been a lot of people that have needed help in different ways, particularly. So about 45 years ago, he introduced me to the charity. I've always believed in it. I've always tried to do my best for it. I'm chairman of it. And it's not necessarily a charity that's known by the consumer, which is understandable because there are so many major charities, Cancer Research, the National Heart Foundation, which unfortunately are much closer to people's homes than they would like. But nevertheless, we have to rely on the industry itself to support its own charity, not without its difficulties, but we keep at it. And so we help a lot of people. And yes, and all the people that sit on the council with me do so without any remuneration, and they do so because they believe in it. They believe in giving back and helping others. And one of the reasons as well why I've helped out locally, with our Jewish communities, because Rabbi Fine, as I mentioned, at the inauguration of Hadleywood Shaw, had been the one to say to me that, living memorials are so much more valuable than a tombstone. And that set me thinking. And so many people, we lived in Southgate when we were first married, and so many people in all these areas, Southgate, Cockfosters, Hadley Wood, have been so wonderful to Marsha and myself, and to Jacqueline, our wonderful daughter, through the years. And that's why, I have many friends in the area who've been special, and the way that they've helped, the way they were with Marsha and I, the way they've helped Jacqueline and I since we lost Marsha, that I just felt, it would be wonderful not only to give Marsha more recognition for the wonderful person that she was, but also to help the communities who had befriended us and also who were wonderful friends. And I've got many friends all over, and particularly in our Hadleywood community. And so, yes, I started off by doing the hall, the Liberal Shawl in Southgate, and then the mikveh, and then Hadleywood Shawl. I haven't been the only benefactor, because lots of people have helped in these areas. But I took on what I took on, because I felt that it was a nice thing to do.
Wow.
Not because one day I'd be sitting here talking about it.
I definitely get that sense, and like I said from the beginning, it really shows in who you are. I can't believe we filled an hour. I can't believe we've gone over an hour. Here was me thinking, how are we going to fill the hour? But now I'm wondering how we could even fill 3 hours. There's so much we could talk about, and I've learned so much from you tonight. 2 take-homes, really for me, is number 1, perseverance, and number 2, your gratitude. You mentioned right at the beginning your gratitude for your mother. You mentioned just at the end your gratitude for the community. That's an incredible way of seeing the world and of seeing life. And I, for one, have been very inspired by that. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with myself, with us. And I look forward to sharing many more good times together with you, together with the entire community.
Please God, we should all be well. We should come through this difficult time, and yes, be able to share many more years in good health, great happiness and nachas for our families and our friends. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Roger. Thank you. And to everyone else who's been watching and sticking all the way through, Thank you so much for watching, for participating. Looking forward to seeing you all next Sunday night, and wishing you all a very happy Hanukkah. If I don't see you before then, Hanukkah starts this Thursday night with lots of initiatives for our